The silent moment before sleep. When night falls, the outside world slowly closes its doors. Familiar daytime noises fade away, the lights grow softer, and the room becomes quieter than it has been all day. This is the moment when a person finally returns to themselves. No roles to perform, no expectations to meet. No one watching. There is only the breath, the heartbeat, and the quiet presence of the mind as the body lies down to rest. Yet, before sleep arrives, the mind often refuses to be silent. It carries the weight of the entire day with it. Words left unsaid, words spoken that now echo differently. Worries about tomorrow, old memories resurfacing without warning. There are nights when the body is exhausted, but the mind keeps moving, as if it has forgotten how to stop. Prayer before sleep is not a heavy ritual, nor a religious obligation performed out of duty. It is a pause, a gentle permission whispered inwardly. Today is complete. It is the moment when strength is no longer required, when understanding everything is no longer necessary, when fixing life can wait until another day. Prayer becomes an act of rest, not effort. It is choosing to stop carrying what no longer needs to be carried through the night. In the silence of evening, the inner voice becomes clearer. Sometimes it speaks through sadness that has not yet found words. Sometimes through exhaustion that has been ignored for too long. Sometimes through a quiet emptiness that feels heavier than pain itself. Before sleep, the defenses soften. The armor comes off. This is when the human heart is most vulnerable, and also when it is most capable of receiving comfort. To pray at this moment does not require perfect words. It does not demand eloquence or certainty. Sometimes it is nothing more than a quiet thought. Please, let me rest. Please help me release what I cannot fix tonight. Please let my mind be at peace. In these words, there is no request for miracles, no demand for answers. There is only the need to lay the burden down, even if only for a few hours. The moment before sleep is a sacred threshold. On one side lies the entire weight of the day, its struggles, mistakes, victories, and unfinished business. On the other side lies surrender, trust, rest. Prayer exists exactly at this boundary, not to change the world in an instant, but to change how we enter the night. As the final light is turned off and the eyes begin to close, something gentle happens. Breathing slows. The body loosens its grip, and in that quiet, prayer becomes less about speaking and more about allowing rest, allowing stillness, allowing the soul to be held when it no longer has the strength to hold itself. This is the silent moment before sleep, the place where we stop striving and begin resting, where prayer is not an effort to control life, but an act of trust that, for now, it is safe to let go. Et le super empathe ne gagne pas, car il n'est plus sur l'échiquier. Son pouvoir ne réside pas dans la chute de l'autre, mais dans le fait de ne plus être aspiré par des structures qui existent par l'inconscient. Lorsqu'un être humain atteint ce point, il n'a plus besoin de partir dans la colère, ni de claquer la porte pour prouver sa détermination. Il s'en va comme s'il avait compris qu'il n'a jamais appartenu à ce jeu. Le pouvoir, dans sa forme la plus pure, est la capacité de demeurer avec soi-même, sans dispersion. Lorsque cela se produit, tout ce qui n'est plus aligné se détache de lui-même, non parce qu'il est rejeté, mais parce qu'il ne résonne plus. Dans la partie suivante, nous aborderons le dernier pilier. Le power, non pas le pouvoir affiché, mais la force intérieure qui naît lorsqu'un être humain n'est plus aspiré par ce qui ne lui appartient pas. Lorsque l'insight est maintenu, le pouvoir n'a plus besoin d'être prouvé. Il se manifeste comme une gravité silencieuse, suffisante pour faire s'effondrer toute structure qui vit d'illusions.
Part 1, Acknowledging Fatigue. There is a quiet honesty required at the beginning of true prayer, especially at night. It begins not with strength, not with gratitude, not even with hope, but with acknowledgement. The simple, vulnerable truth that says, I am tired, not just physically, but deeply, inwardly tired. The kind of tiredness that sleep alone does not immediately heal. All day long, we are taught, directly or indirectly, to keep going, to endure, to stay composed, to manage, solve, respond, and perform. Fatigue becomes something to hide, something to overcome, something we postpone dealing with. We tell ourselves we will rest later, when things calm down, when life becomes easier. But night has a way of revealing what we have been suppressing, When the world grows quiet and the body finally lies still, the exhaustion we carried silently all day rises to the surface. To acknowledge this fatigue is not weakness, it is truth, and truth is the doorway to rest. Prayer before sleep begins when we stop pretending that we are fine, when we allow ourselves to say, even silently, I am worn down, I am depleted, I have given more than I had today. There is no need to justify this exhaustion. It does not need to be compared to anyone else's struggle. Fatigue does not require permission to exist. It only asks to be recognized. There is a particular heaviness that comes from emotional and mental exhaustion, the kind that accumulates over time. It forms when we carry responsibilities that never truly end, when we remain strong for others while neglecting ourselves, when we absorb stress, conflict, disappointment, or fear without releasing it. This fatigue does not announce itself loudly. It settles quietly into the nervous system, tightening the chest, clouding the mind, and making rest feel strangely difficult. In prayer, we are invited to stop resisting this state, not to fix it, not to analyze it, but to name it. I am tired. These words alone carry a kind of relief. They release the pressure to keep proving resilience. They allow the body and mind to stop fighting what is already true. At night, the soul longs to be met without conditions. It does not want instruction or correction. It wants gentleness. Acknowledging fatigue is an act of compassion toward oneself. It is saying, I see how much I've carried. I recognize how long I've been holding on. I no longer need to pretend I can do more right now. This acknowledgement also softens the inner critic, the voice that says you should have done more, been better, tried harder. That voice often grows louder at night, replaying the day's moments, pointing out perceived failures. Prayer interrupts this cycle by shifting the focus from judgment to presence. Instead of evaluating the day, we simply witness ourselves within it, tired and human. There is something sacred about admitting weariness before sleep. It aligns the body and the soul. It allows the nervous system to begin its descent from vigilance into safety. When we acknowledge fatigue honestly, we send a quiet signal inward. You no longer need to stay alert. You are allowed to rest now. In prayer, this acknowledgement might sound simple. I am exhausted, and I no longer want to carry this alone. Or it may not take words at all, just a long exhale, a loosening of the shoulders, a softening of the jaw. The body understands honesty, even when the mind struggles to articulate it. Importantly, acknowledging fatigue is not the same as giving up. It is not surrendering to despair. It is choosing truth over performance, and truth creates space for healing. Sleep becomes possible not when we force it, but when we stop demanding more of ourselves than we can give. Before sleep, we do not need to be strong. Strength belongs to daylight. Night belongs to release, to rest, to being held rather than holding everything together. So, prayer begins here in this quiet admission. No explanations, no defenses, just the gentle recognition I am tired. And in that recognition, something begins to ease. The weight does not disappear instantly, but it loosens. The body starts to let go. The mind slows its grip. This is the first step toward peace before sleep, not striving for calm, but allowing fatigue to be seen, honored, and laid gently at rest. Part 2, letting go of what is no longer in your control. As the body settles into rest and the world outside grows quiet, the mind often resists the transition. It clings to unfinished thoughts, unresolved conversations, and imagined futures. This is the mind's attempt to maintain control, to keep watch, to prevent mistakes, to protect against uncertainty. But night is not a place for control. It is a place for release. Letting go of what we cannot control is one of the most difficult acts of trust, especially before sleep. During the day, effort gives the illusion of influence. We believe that if we think long enough, replay enough, or worry deeply enough, something will change. But at night, this illusion collapses. Nothing more can be done. And this is not failure, it is a boundary. Prayer before sleep invites us to recognize that boundary and respect it. It asks us to name what no longer belongs to us tonight, decisions that cannot be made now, outcomes we cannot predict, reactions we cannot manage, people we cannot change. Holding on to these things does not protect us. It only keeps the nervous system alert when it needs rest. To let go is not to forget. It is not to deny responsibility or disengage from care. It is to place things where they belong, outside the body, outside the mind, outside the night. In prayer, this may sound like, I release what cannot be solved right now. I set down what does not require my attention tonight. These words are not commands to the mind, but permissions to the body. There is a specific fatigue that comes from carrying imagined futures. Anxiety often lives in what if. What if something goes wrong? What if I made the wrong choice? What if tomorrow brings more than I can handle? These thoughts feel urgent, but they have no answers in the dark. Night offers no evidence, only imagination. Prayer gently interrupts this pattern by redirecting attention from prediction to presence. Letting go also includes releasing the past for the night. Regret has a way of replaying itself in quiet moments. The mind revisits mistakes, missed opportunities, and unresolved emotions, believing that repetition might bring closure. But closure does not come through repetition, it comes through rest. Prayer allows us to say, what is done for today. I will return to this with clearer eyes tomorrow. The body responds powerfully to this release. When we stop holding what we cannot control, muscles soften, breathing deepens. The nervous system shifts from defense to restoration. This is not psychological theory, it is a physical response to safety. Letting go tells the body, nothing needs immediate action. Many people struggle with sleep because they confuse vigilance with responsibility. They believe that staying mentally active is a form of care, but true care includes knowing when to stop. Prayer reframes rest as an act of wisdom rather than neglect. To release control is also to release self-blame. We often assume responsibility for outcomes shaped by many forces beyond us. We replay scenarios, imagining different responses, different words, different timing. Prayer helps us acknowledge the limits of influence without collapsing into helplessness. It says, I did what I could with what I knew. That acknowledgement carries relief. Night teaches us a crucial lesson. Life continues without our supervision. Breath continues. The heart continues. Time continues. Trusting this rhythm is part of surrender. When we stop monitoring everything, we allow ourselves to rejoin the natural cycle of rest and renewal. In prayer, letting go may not happen all at once. The mind may return to worry repeatedly. This is not failure. Each time we notice, we release again. Letting go is not a single act, it is a gentle practice. As sleep approaches, we are invited to loosen our grip not on life, but on the illusion that we must manage it constantly. Control belongs to the day. Night belongs to trust. And in this trust, rest becomes possible. Part 3, asking for forgiveness and learning to forgive yourself. As the night deepens and the body settles into stillness, the mind often begins its quiet review of the day. Moments replay themselves without invitation, words spoken too sharply, silences held too long, choices made in haste, or moments when fear kept us from acting at all. Before sleep, conscience becomes more sensitive and memory more persistent. This is why forgiveness becomes such an essential part of prayer at night. To ask for forgiveness is not to punish oneself. It is not an act of self-condemnation or shame. True forgiveness begins with honesty and gentleness. It begins by acknowledging that we are human, limited, and imperfect, doing the best we can with the awareness and strength we had at the time. In prayer, asking for forgiveness is not about listing every mistake. It is about opening the heart and saying, I recognize where I fell short. I see where I acted from fear, impatience, or pain rather than love. There is no need to dramatize these moments. They are not proof of failure. They are evidence of being human. Yet, for many people, the hardest part is not asking for forgiveness from something greater, it is forgiving themselves. Self-forgiveness is often resisted because we believe guilt keeps us accountable. We fear that if we forgive ourselves, we will excuse our behavior or repeat our mistakes. But guilt does not transform us. Awareness does. Night is when self-judgment becomes most active. The inner voice replays conversations, magnifies flaws, and turns small imperfections into heavy burdens. Prayer offers a different response. Instead of arguing with that voice or feeding it, we step back and speak with compassion. I did what I could today. I am learning. I am allowed to grow without hating myself in the process. Self-forgiveness does not deny responsibility. It places responsibility within a wider context of mercy. It says, I acknowledge my limits without rejecting myself. This shift is subtle but powerful. When the heart softens toward itself, the body follows, tension loosens, breathing deepens, sleep becomes more accessible. There are also those we carry in our hearts when night comes, people who hurt us, disappointed us, misunderstood us, or left wounds that never fully healed. Forgiveness toward others does not mean forgetting what happened, nor does it mean inviting harm again. It means choosing not to carry the weight of resentment into the night. Prayer creates a space where we can say, I release what still hurts me, not because the pain was insignificant, but because rest is more important than reliving it. Forgiveness here is an act of self-protection. It is choosing peace over reopening old wounds at the moment the soul most needs rest. Sometimes forgiveness is not complete in one night. That is okay. Prayer does not demand instant healing. It only asks for willingness. Even saying, I am not ready to forgive yet, but I am open to learning how, is already a movement toward freedom. Before sleep, forgiveness becomes a form of cleansing, not erasing the day, but clearing the emotional residue it leaves behind. It is like washing one's hands before resting, simple, quiet, necessary. In this part of prayer, we are not seeking perfection. We are seeking release. Release from harsh self-judgment. Release from the expectation that we must have done everything right. Release from carrying unfinished emotional battles into our dreams. Forgiveness allows us to rest without being haunted by the day. It restores the inner balance between responsibility and mercy. And when we forgive ourselves, we give permission for the nervous system to stand down, for the heart to stop racing, for the mind to loosen its grip on control. So before sleep, we speak gently. Forgive me where I fell short. Help me forgive myself where I was afraid, tired, or unaware. Teach me to rest without carrying guilt into the night. In this quiet act of forgiveness, something shifts. The day no longer clings so tightly, the heart feels lighter, and sleep, no longer blocked by regret or self-punishment, becomes a place of healing rather than escape. This is not the end of growth, it is the foundation of it. Forgiveness before sleep allows the soul to lay down in peace, trusting that tomorrow can begin again without the weight of yesterday pressing on the chest. Part 4. Gratitude for the small things. As the night grows quieter and the mind begins to slow, gratitude enters gently, without noise or demand. It does not arrive as a grand declaration or a forced positivity. It comes softly, almost unnoticed, like a warm light turning on inside the chest. Before sleep, gratitude is not about celebrating achievements or victories. It is about recognizing what quietly carried us through the day. Gratitude at night teaches a different way of seeing. Instead of scanning the day for what went wrong, it invites us to notice what remained steady, the breath that never abandoned us, the body that endured more than it should have had to. The simple fact that we are still here, still breathing, still allowed another ending to another day. Often, we believe gratitude must be reserved for big moments, success, joy, answered prayers, visible blessings. But the night reveals something else. It is the small, ordinary things that truly sustain us. A moment of silence between tasks, a glass of water when the throat was dry, a roof overhead, a bed waiting to receive our tired body. These things are so familiar that we forget their quiet generosity. Before sleep, gratitude becomes grounding. It brings the mind back into the present moment. When anxiety pulls us toward tomorrow and regret pulls us toward yesterday, gratitude anchors us in now. It reminds us that despite imperfections, despite fatigue, something has held us today. There is a deep psychological gentleness in gratitude. It shifts the nervous system from alertness to safety. When we name even one small thing we are thankful for, the body responds. Shoulders lower, the jaw softens, the breath deepens, the mind loosens its tight grip on worry. Gratitude tells the body, you survived today. Sometimes the day was hard, even painful. Gratitude does not deny that. It does not minimize suffering or ask us to pretend everything was fine. Instead, it exists alongside pain. It says, even here, something supported me. Maybe it was the strength to keep going. Maybe it was the ability to stop. Maybe it was simply the end of the day itself. Before sleep, we can be grateful even for lessons that hurt because they are over for now. Gratitude does not mean liking the pain. It means recognizing that it did not destroy us. It means acknowledging that growth often arrives quietly, disguised as endurance. In prayer, gratitude may sound like this: thank you for the small mercies I often overlook. Thank you for what protected me today without my awareness. Thank you for the moments that did not demand anything from me. These words are not obligations, they are recognitions. Gratitude also reconnects us to humility. It reminds us that we are not entirely self-sustaining. We live within a web of support, seen and unseen. Air, time, shelter, the quiet continuation of life. Before sleep, acknowledging this interdependence brings comfort. We do not carry ourselves alone. There is something especially healing about gratitude at night because it changes how the mind enters sleep. Instead of replaying stress or scanning for threats, the mind gently settles into acknowledgement. Sleep becomes less about escape and more about trust. Trust that enough was enough. Trust that rest is deserved. Even gratitude for the smallest thing, a single calm breath, a moment of stillness. The darkness itself has power. It does not require effort. It only requires attention. And attention, when softened by gratitude, becomes a form of prayer. Gratitude before sleep is not meant to impress or prove anything. It is a quiet alignment, a subtle turning of the heart away from scarcity and towards sufficiency. Not because everything is perfect, but because something is present. As the eyes grow heavier and the body sinks deeper into rest, gratitude gently completes the day. It closes the inner narrative without urgency. It whispers, "This was enough. You were enough. And for now, that is sufficient." In this state, sleep arrives more naturally, not forced, not chased, but welcomed, carried on the quiet awareness that even the smallest gifts, when noticed, are enough to bring the heart to rest. Part 5, Surrendering to Sleep. As the night deepens and the room settles into stillness, there comes a moment when effort no longer serves us. This is the moment of surrender. Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as trust. To entrust sleep is to recognize that rest cannot be forced, it must be allowed. All day, we rely on control. We manage time, thoughts, emotions, and responsibilities. We solve problems, make decisions, and hold ourselves together through constant effort. But sleep exists beyond control. The more we try to command it, the further it drifts. Sleep arrives only when we release the need to stay vigilant. To surrender sleep in prayer is to say, quietly and honestly, "I no longer need to stay awake to protect everything. I release my watch for the night." These words may not be spoken aloud, but the body understands them immediately. Muscles soften. The breath slows. The nervous system receives permission to stand down. Fothak entrustment is not about giving up responsibility forever. It is about placing it aside for a while. Night was never meant to carry the weight of the world. Yet so many people lie awake, replaying conversations, planning tomorrow, bracing for what might go wrong. In prayer, we interrupt this cycle. We acknowledge that nothing essential will be solved at this hour. Rest is not avoidance, it is preparation. There is a deep humility in surrendering sleep. It requires admitting that we are not meant to be conscious all the time, not meant to carry everything alone. When we entrust ourselves to rest, we accept our human limits. And within those limits, something gentle happens. Care replaces effort. Surrendering to sleep is also an act of safety. It tells the body, you are not in danger right now, you are allowed to let go. Many people struggle with sleep not because they lack tiredness, but because their nervous systems have forgotten how to feel safe. Prayer helps reestablish that sense of safety by shifting attention away from threat and toward trust. In this moment, we may pray simply, "I place my body, my thoughts, and my worries into rest. Watch over what I cannot watch. Hold what I cannot hold tonight." These are not requests for control to be taken away forever, only for the night. As surrender deepens, the boundary between waking and sleeping begins to blur. Thoughts lose their urgency. Images drift without attachment. The body sinks into the bed, no longer bracing, no longer guarding. This is the threshold where sleep naturally emerges. Fothak Jiak Nu also means releasing the need to have answers before morning. Many lie awake because they believe clarity must come before rest, but clarity often comes after rest, not before. Sleep restores perspective. Prayer reminds us that it is safe to not know everything yet. There is something sacred in this release. Across cultures and traditions, night has always been associated with trust. Trust that the sun will rise again. Trust that breath will continue. Trust that life knows how to carry itself for a few hours without our supervision. As we surrender, even the identity of the self softens. We are no longer the one who must decide, fix, or respond. We become simply a being at rest. This is not emptiness, it is refuge. In this final movement before sleep, prayer becomes almost wordless. Breathing becomes the prayer. Stillness becomes the answer. The act of lying down, of closing the eyes, of letting consciousness fade, becomes an expression of faith, faith in rest, in renewal, in the quiet intelligence of life itself. And when sleep finally arrives, it is not taken by force, it comes as a gift, a gentle closing of the day. A reminder that for a while, we are allowed to disappear into rest, knowing that we will be returned, restored, and renewed when morning comes. This is the surrender of sleep, not losing control, but releasing it into something kinder. In this state, sleep arrives more naturally, not forced, not chased, but welcomed, carried on the quiet awareness that even the smallest gifts, when noticed, are enough to bring the heart to rest. Peace in silence. As the night fully settles and the world slips into stillness, silence becomes more than the absence of sound. It becomes a presence, a quiet space where nothing is demanded and nothing is missing. In this silence, the day finally loosens its grip, and the soul is no longer asked to explain itself. Peace before sleep does not arrive with certainty or answers. It arrives when the need for answers fades, when the mind stops searching for resolution and allows itself to simply be. In this moment, silence is not empty, it is protective. It wraps gently around the heart, offering refuge from the noise of effort, expectation, and memory. There is a deep kind of peace that exists only in stillness. It is not excitement. It is not relief from success. It is the calm that comes when striving ends, when the body rests without guarding, and the mind no longer resists the present moment. This peace does not need to be created. It emerges naturally when nothing stands in its way. In the final moments before sleep, we are invited to trust this silence, to let it hold what words no longer need to carry. Thoughts may still arise, but they no longer demand attention. Feelings may still linger, but they are no longer overwhelming. Everything is allowed to soften. Peace in silence also reminds us that we are not alone in rest. Even in complete quiet, there is a sense of being held by the rhythm of breath, by the steady beating of the heart, by the unseen continuity of life itself. This quiet companionship does not require belief or effort. It simply exists. As sleep approaches, identity dissolves gently. The roles of the day fall away. The self that struggled, hoped, feared, or endured no longer needs to remain alert. In silence, we return to something simpler than thought, a state of being that existed long before effort and will return again after rest. This is why silence is not something to fear at night. It is not loneliness. It is sanctuary. It is the place where the nervous system finally stands down and the soul remembers that it is safe to rest. In this closing moment, prayer is no longer spoken. It has already been answered in the form of peace. The body knows what to do. The breath slows on its own. The heart settles into a steady rhythm. The day fades without resistance. And so we end not with words, but with permission. Permission to rest without guilt. Permission to sleep without vigilance. Permission to trust the quiet. Nothing more is required. In this silence, peace remains. Sleep restores perspective. Prayer reminds us that it is safe to not know everything yet. There is something sacred in this release. Across cultures and traditions, night has always been associated with trust. Trust that the sun will rise again. Trust that breath will continue. Trust that life knows how to carry itself for a few hours without our supervision. As we surrender, even the identity of the self softens. We are no longer the one who must decide, fix, or respond. We become simply a being at rest. This is not emptiness, it is refuge. In this final movement before sleep, prayer becomes almost wordless. Breathing becomes the prayer. Stillness becomes the answer. The act of lying down, of closing the eyes, of letting consciousness fade, becomes an expression of faith, faith in rest, in renewal, in the quiet intelligence of life itself. And when sleep finally arrives, it is not taken by force, it comes as a gift, a gentle closing of the day. A reminder that for a while, we are allowed to disappear into rest, knowing that we will be returned, restored, and renewed when morning comes. This is the surrender of sleep, not losing control, but releasing it into something kinder. In this state, sleep arrives more naturally, not forced, not chased, but welcomed, carried on the quiet awareness that even the smallest gifts, when noticed, are enough to bring the heart to rest.